We interrupt our program to bring you
Essential Services.
Hi, Washandra. Thank you for joining me on Essential Services. Now, you run and founded Soaring Sisters, which is a sexual recovery and trauma ministry in Alabama.
Yes,
Yes.
that's correct.
Could you tell me a bit about it?
Yeah, Soaring Sisters, we actually rolled out the ministry in May of 2016. And it was just formed because there was such a great need notice when it came to just me encountering people who had experienced sexual trauma and a lot of them who had never even received services. And so what I recognized is that even though there were some services available for children who were identified to have gone through certain things, I realized a lot of adults went through similar circumstances, but they never ever shared their stories. And so what we found is that we saw adults in adulthood trying to deal with the daily struggles of just managing the things that they needed to do, but not really having the capacity due to needing to deal with that trauma that was never addressed. And so I wanted to create a resource that could be beneficial to those who may not have received services during those youth years, because sometimes not all survivors come forward with their story.
And how do you go about sort of reaching out to those survivors?
Actually, what we use is we normally rely on social media, a lot of word of mouth, and just people hearing about the ministry and knowing people who could benefit from it. We've even had some churches or religious institutions to invite us in to just share information so that those that they serve to learn about the resources that are available within the community. And so it's been a lot of word of mouth, social media. Also utilizing our website, which is at soaringsistersinc.org. And so some people will navigate to that website. And so those have been the main outlets that we've used to really get the word out about the services.
And how important is seeking recovery with something like sexual trauma?
It is so important. I don't think I can even drive home just how crucial it is for individuals who've experienced sexual trauma to really seek out services to address that need, because so many times I see people that are really going through life and they're not really dealing with their public or their professional relationships in the best way, or even their romantic relationships, because they don't realize like there's a need for them to address that trauma so that they can function at capacity in all of these other areas. So I can't emphasize it enough. I think sometimes people lead survivors to believe that time heals all wounds. But when it comes to sexual trauma, I do not believe that time heals all wounds. I think we have to face it to fix it.
Yeah. And so when you do have people when people first come to Soaring Sisters, what sort of what is their experience? Like what do you do for them? What does like a afternoon or a day look like with Soaring Sisters?
And normally when we participate or when someone decides to join us for our recovery groups, we try to keep it a very relaxed, friendly environment. We like to give our participants, give them voice so that they can make decisions as to how they choose to participate or not participate. Because what we realize is that when people have experienced sexually traumatic events, a lot of times their voice has been taken away. They really did not have the chance to really say the things that they may have wanted to say. And so what we want to make sure is that the environment that we invite individuals into is one that is open, that is welcoming, that's fun, that is free for them to have free speech, where if they choose to decide to share something, they can. If they don't, we don't force them to do that. And so we just really want to make it as comfortable as possible so that we can try to help to reintegrate them back into the process so that they can learn how to trust and how to utilize those skills that are needed to just function in a day-to-day basis. And so it's really just a really laid back, fun environment. We try to keep it very interactive, because what I know is that when you talk about things like sexual trauma, it's not always easy. And so we try not to just have a narrative session. And so we use a lot of interactive activities to kind of get people moving and to do things so that they can address that trauma without necessarily having to rely on their narrative to do that.
Yeah. That sounds amazing. You deal with it's sexual trauma, rape, incest. Like these are very sort of heavy terms. Like I know it's a very big question, but why do you think these issues do exist in our society? Like from your experience
that's a
with
good question.
survivors. I
That's
know it's massive, but I'd just love to sort of hear what you'd have to say on that, since you
yes.
do work so
I think
closely with it.
there are a lot of contributing factors when it comes to why these issues exist in
Mm,
society. Sometimes it's perspective, sometimes it's a lack of education, sometimes it's just the stigma that's associated with
mm,
people having to come forth and say that certain things have occurred in their lives. And so I think there are a lot of factors that really play a part into that. Sometimes it's family dynamics. In some families, people don't feel the need to go outside of the family or to even share the things that they've experienced. And so I think there are a lot of factors that really affect that issue.
yeah, definitely. I remember when I was speaking to you before, I was sort of wanting to look at women of color in regards to sexual trauma and rape as well. And I remember you saying that it's usually black women that don't want to come forth. They're not as forthcoming as, say, white women. Is that what you've, like, could you talk a bit about that?
In the women in the communities
Yeah.
that I've served in, I do see where there is a great need for women of color to feel more comfortable with coming forward with their story. I think sometimes we are so strong in our own eyes that we don't really see the need to have to address it.
Mm,
And so many times, just the family systems and the culture that we grow up in sometimes leads us to believe that, hey, you don't have to disclose those things. You're okay, and if you're breathing, and if you're functioning, and if you're still able to do certain things like go to work, there's no need to really deal with that. But in the process of us feeling that we're so strong and not seeing the need to deal with it, what I see is a lot of times if we don't deal with the trauma deals with us in ways that we don't even recognize that it's affecting our life.
I love that. Yeah, the trauma deals with us. That's huge. So with COVID-19, how have you found what's going on in Alabama? Like, is it very difficult to do your ministry, or have you found ways around it? What's going on?
Yes, it has been so difficult. This COVID-19 has caused all of us to kind of have to rethink and try to redetermine ways that we can best meet the needs of those that we serve. It has been difficult because since trauma or sexual trauma in particular sometimes isolates individuals and causes them to kind of withdraw from people, that was really one of the big aspects that I saw when I created the ministry is that I wanted us to be able to connect because I saw that connectivity was a big issue because so many times sexual trauma causes people to withdraw. So with COVID-19 going on, it kind of makes it hard for us to be able to engage face to face. And that's something we really rely on heavily because we want to be able to love on the ladies or the guys that come through. We want to be able to have that face to face interaction with them. And so we're currently trying to revisit or just determine some ways that we can best meet the needs of those who have to deal with those issues even during these COVID-19 times.
Yeah, and I'm sort of afraid for women that are in isolated situations that may be experiencing sexual trauma, perhaps for the first time, just given the circumstance. What sort of things are out there for them, and can they reach out to Soaring Sisters, or like especially if they are locally in Alabama, like what are your thoughts on that? Are you sort of thinking the same thing? Like when all of this lockdown happened, what were your thoughts on it?
Yes, I do think about that because honestly, to answer a few questions, yes,
Yeah,
they can reach out to Soaring
yeah.
Sisters. We can be contacted via our Facebook page. Feel free to message us directly, and you can find us at Soaring Sisters Inc. on Facebook, and so you can message us directly using that outlet. But
Mm-hmm.
also, too, we have a contact us tab on our website at soaringsistersinc.org. And so anyone who wants to reach out is free to reach out via that website. It's not just limited to individuals that are in Alabama, because what we recognize is that this is a far-reaching issue, and so there are people in all different places that experiences this. And so if there's a need to connect, we want those that have been impacted to reach out because we don't want our individuals to be isolated. We don't want them to feel like they have to go through things alone because guess what? A lot of times sexual trauma has already caused people to have to go through things kind of alone. And so we want them to be very connected. And so please do reach out with that. Please don't hesitate to reach out to any resources in the area, because connection is key. I feel like when it comes to working through the trauma and really becoming the best expression of who we are created to be, I think connection is key because in terms of our creation, we were not created to live in isolation. We were not created to just kind of be alone. And so I think connection is very crucial to us making that progress that we desire to see. When we think about sexual trauma and the way that it impacts mental health and those types of things, isolation is also an enemy to that. And so I just think about not only is the sexual trauma an issue, but when you're isolated, it increases the chances of you possibly experiencing other mental health issues because you're isolated from everyone. And so we have to find creative ways to still reach out and get connected, and that's where the social media or the phone contacts come in place. And so we have to get connected somehow because connection is key.
Yeah. Could you also just please tell me a bit about the recovery groups?
We have a lot of different activities. A lot of my team members that really joke me about being creative when it comes to coming up with different ways to address different things. And so normally what we'll do is we'll start off with like our meet and greet time. People will get their name badges, and that way we can address each sister or each person by the name that they desire to be called. From there, we'll go into some type of quote unscramble because I like to give people food for thought, words to think about that really ties to whatever our topic of the day is. So for instance, in one meeting we may deal with building trust. And so we'll have a quote tied to building trust, and we'll kind of do an interactive activity where our ladies will get into teams, and we'll kind of have to try to decipher the quote, and then from there we'll use that to build on for the duration of the meeting. And so we just try to be very interactive with it. We've had lip syncing contests. I mean, we find all kind of creative ways to get it done. And so a lot of times we end up really laughing almost into crying just from having a good time while dealing with that trauma. We try to do it in a fun way.
Yeah. Would you say that what I took from that is like joy is really what you're sort of trying to muster up as well as on this journey of recovery? Is there any key things as well? Is it like building trust that's really important? Is it building self-esteem? Like, what are sort of the things that you are working on internally on these survivors?
Some of the things that we work with, and I have a whole list that I don't have. I know we've dealt with everything from forgiveness to self-forgiveness, because sometimes I've seen survivors that blame themselves for what happened to them. And so we have to try to help individuals to understand that no matter what situation you were in, no one had the right to take advantage of you in that situation. And so sometimes self-forgiveness, sometimes we deal with things as far as building healthy relationships, because when individuals may have experienced a traumatic or sexually traumatic event, what we'll see is that sometimes they'll self-sabotage future relationships and encounters that they have with people that may mean them good, that may want to have a nice relationship with them. And so we have to kind of rethink and help them to relearn how to love, how to trust, how to accept those things, and to recognize that even though you experience a sexually traumatic event, it does not mean that you're unworthy of love. It does not mean that you're unworthy of experiencing the joy of true relationship. And so we just have to really go back to the basics so that we can build from the ground up post-trauma.
Yeah. Also, is there anything that you'd like to add yourself that you'd like to share or say?
Connectivity part, that's very key. I like to share our motto because it's faith, hope, love, standing together, rising above. We always say that. And what we say that to, the reason we say that is because what we want people to know is a lot of times we think that, hey, I'm the person who went through this. That's a horrible thing that happened to me. I'm damaged goods. But I try to reiterate and remind those that we serve that if we really look at the numbers and just the way that stats have shown things, there are more survivors than there are perpetrators. And so it's more of us than them, but we have to recognize that we don't have to stand alone. We have a team. We have other people that are behind us cheering us on to help us to truly rise above and overcome any and everything that we've ever experienced. Because trauma tales don't have to be our narrative. We decide our story, and we tell it on our time, on our terms, and in our way. And so I just want to encourage people to really recognize that, hey, it's more of us than them. And so we have to really take a stand and support each other to really make the progress to become the best expression of who we're created to be.
Yes. Thank you so much.